Thank you, Sophia. Welcome, everybody. I'm hoping that you are excited to be with us. I myself am based in Mumbai, so for the people who are based in Mumbai itself, I hope your connection will hold till the end of the webinar with the cyclone passing by. For now, it seems to be fine. So a little bit going into the context of the webinar today, it is part of the series we've been running, or CFO series, where we're looking at specific industries and looking through the lens of the CFO on how the revival in these industries looks like. And today we have a panel of 5 panelists, and all of them work in larger consumer companies as being the leader in finance. And I'm just going to take you through and have a quick rapid fire for you to learn them a little bit better. If you want to know about their professional experiences, LinkedIn is available. I'll give you a little bit insight in the other aspects or their personal life. So I'll start with Gyanesh Srivastava. He is CFO of Capital Foods. And Gyanesh, when I was looking at your profile, I saw you were across the globe, or you have been in a lot of different places across the globe. What's your most favorite city where you've lived? Is that in India? Is that abroad? What would you say?
So Nicolas, for me, the best city that I've lived is Melbourne, Australia. So, it was a dream come true for all of us, as in me and my family, when we relocated to Australia for a 2.5-year stint. So for me, the culture is very, very different compared to India. The country is very beautiful. And for me, the fact that country is able to, keep itself to the core values, which is what is very important. And I found that really interesting. And work-life balance, as they call it. So Australia is a living example of that concept. And, we are kind of, reinventing it out here, so to speak.
But still, you decided to come back. That's good to see that you're back in India.
Yeah, India.
Thank you, Ganesh, and welcome on the panel. Next, we have Harsh Bhutani. Harsh himself, he is CFO at the Coca-Cola company. Before that, he was long time with the bottling company Hindustan Coca-Cola. Harsh, I've seen you've been long in Gurgaon, and I live myself in Gurgaon for a couple of years itself. So I'm very interested to know what's your favorite place there, because I have a couple of them myself.
So Nick, I think I moved from Gurgaon back to Bangalore about 2.5 years back. Yeah. So as we speak, I'm in Bangalore. I was on my way back to Gurgaon, but given the situation we are in, movement is not possible. So I'm just waiting for things to get over to move back to Gurgaon. So I've been out of Gurgaon now for almost 3 years, but have been long enough there. Yeah.
And what was your favorite place when you were there?
So in terms of the Gurgaon, has a lot of eating and drinking outlets. So one of my favorite has been Delhi Heights there. I don't know if you ever been.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
Enjoyed going there.
Okay, perfect. Maybe I see you there in my next trip there. Welcome to the panel. Pawan Agrawal, he is EVP and Head Finance at Marico. Yeah. Pawan, I see you're from Mumbai, like myself, or living in Mumbai. So Mumbai, known for Bollywood. What's your favorite Bollywood movie?
There are lots, but I think the one which I think my all-time favorite is, 3 Idiots.
3 Idiots? Oh, I actually saw that movie. I like the scene in Ladakh mainly at the end. Thank you, Pawan. Next one, Pratyush Mittal. He is CFO at Mondelez. So I've seen that you've been actually in the country in a lot of different places. I saw Chennai, I saw a couple of other places. What's your favorite place in India for yourself?
So, Nick, I think for me, it's Gurgaon. I really liked my stay there. Being from North and also having, lived there for 2-3 years, I thought the quality of life and the overall experience of staying in Gurgaon was the best. And the second one, of course, is Mumbai now.
Okay, perfect. So at least you keep it a bit in the middle. It's like myself. I've been in both places as well. Thank you and welcome to the panel. And last, we have Sheshadri, Savalgi, who is finance director at General Mills, and who has been also a long time in Mumbai, if I'm correct. So what's your favorite place to go for food, Sheshadri? I'm very keen to know some new places.
Frankly, I think so. I'm basically from Bangalore, and I've been in Mumbai for last 7-8 years. So I have actually, I don't think I've explored the entire Mumbai. So some of the places which I think you could go. So I've always been based out of Andheri or Powai. So I actually like to go towards Juhu whenever to see the breeze and on the beachside hotel. So that's what I like. And I think from a place standpoint, one of the things I was hearing Pratyush, so I actually like Chandigarh a lot. So I've stayed in Chandigarh. I think it's a great city. Very, and my second best would be Mumbai.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, so we ended with places and food, and that's a little bit what we're also going to talk about. This is in our first section. This is about consumer behavior. And Sophia, if you can just put up the question once, which the poll is we're going to run. And the question is, what could be the trend in consumer behavior post-COVID? Yeah, is this only focusing on buying essentials? Reinitiate buying of discretionary products categories in a restricted manner, resume pre-COVID buying pattern, or it's a bit unpredictable now. And taking it a little bit further and asking to the panel, maybe starting with Pawan, who within Marico, they have a quite diverse portfolio of essentials and non-essentials. Have you seen, or have you as a company been looking differently at your product mix and what to do?
Yeah, you're right, Nico. Ever since this pandemic has broke, it is very clear that there are going to be some shifts in the consumer behavior. And some of the shifts we believe are going to be while temporary, but some of the shifts will definitely be permanent in nature. So one which we definitely think is that there's already a trend in terms of moving towards health, hygiene, immunity. If you look at the urban consumers, there has been rising awareness towards health consciousness. And now what has happened is this pandemic has kind of accelerated this trend. So now more and more consumers will be moving towards adopting these habits which are more hygienic. And purely from a foods space, I believe immunity will be the new buzzword. And if you typically look at, in the foods space, in the healthy foods space, typically there's a buzzword which keeps on going. So at some point in time, it was, let's say, glucose, then it moved on to protein, and now I believe the buzzword will be immunity. And you would see that even in the short span of time, many of the companies have been able to come up with products for immunity boosters. So that is one change which I believe is going to remain from a permanent perspective. I think it's not going to die down in the short term.
What are you doing specifically in Marico? Is it like looking at new products or changing the products you which you currently have, or the brands you currently have in terms of
so see, we have a fairly diversified portfolio. So we deal in foods, we also deal in personal care. So since we are discussing about foods over here, so we have a edible oil portfolio called Saffola, and then we have a healthy foods portfolio where we have Saffola oats and Saffola masala oats. But at the same time, what we believe is that this pandemic will also increase is the in-home consumption, and people are looking for convenience. So therefore, the category of ready to eat, ready to cook is again, we believe, is going to explode. So we have seen a huge amount of saliency in these categories even during lockdown. And as I said, some of these behaviors will continue because people once get used to a convenience, it will be very difficult for them to move out. So over here also, we are trying to come up with portfolio which is in that space, as well as we are working on portfolio which will lead to a healthy immunity booster sort of a platform.
So interesting aspect, the ready to eat, because I think Capital Foods has a couple of products in their portfolio. Is this something which you see happening on the ground, Gyanesh?
Yeah, very much, Nico. Actually, to be very, very transparent. So right now, like Pawan said, ready to cook and ready to eat is, really taking off in a very big way. Couple of things, if I were to just speak about the consumer. So consumer, typically in this kind of a situation wants to buy healthy, wants to buy safe, and non-contact way of working is the buzzword right now. So if you see from those perspectives, a couple of things which are very interesting is that there is a lot of shift that we are seeing towards branded ready to cook and ready to eat. There's a lot of stuff which is there in India. If you were to see, almost 40% of ready to eat is actually unbranded. So we are seeing a lot of the unbranded people. One, they are having issues in actually scaling up operations because of working capital issues. The other is that there is a preference of the consumer actually to go for something which is more safe, and branded has this perception of being safe. So clearly we see a migration which is happening. The other one that we are also seeing is pantry loading. So if you see the big packs, typically people would want to buy the small packs, the 60-gram noodles, for example. We are seeing a lot of people preferring the 240-gram bulk noodle pack. So there is a lot of I would say pantry loading that is happening right now at this point in time, which is a very different trend when we when we are supposed to talk in the past. The third thing that we are also noticing is that availability is the key right now. So brands which are available are actually getting trial. So example, Capital Foods is a small company in terms of the kind of products that we have, but Maggi in our space, for example, in noodles would be by far the market leader. But in the current context, if we are available, we are finding a lot of people trying our product and liking our product. So that's also something that we are finding interesting. So for me, overall, to summarize, there's a lot of changes happening, and we believe that ready to cook and ready to eat will be the new new way of lifestyle for the next at least couple of years to come. It's going to grow in a big way.
Okay, so for the more traditional companies, and I'm opening it a bit to the panel, that means that there's a shift in the portfolio happening for sure, and there's then also the temporary measure that only essential foods or essential products are looked at, and the volumes are actually increasing, and the non-essential category probably is a little bit more stable. How do you manage it from a finance point of view and as a company as a whole? Maybe asking to Pratyush at Mondelez.
So yeah, Nicolas, I think I pretty much echo what Pawan and Gyanesh have said about shifting consumer behavior and the kind of packs that they're eating. And actually, we are a treat company. If you look at Mondelez and our portfolio, we've got stuff like Cadbury's, Oreo cookies, and Bonvita. We do have a bit of a health and wellness portfolio also, which is like Bonvita and the biscuits that we have. So there is a shift clearly happening, and there is what do you say? There is a focus on packaged foods. What we are seeing is, of course, chocolates. Of course, is also something that is getting a bit impacted. Now, the reason why we see chocolates getting impacted is, one is a lot of it is out of home consumption, and the trends that we are seeing right now is nesting at home. People are sitting at home and they're trying to kind of stock up. At the same time, we also believe that in the times to come, chocolate is going to bounce back strongly because consumers would like to have packaged and safe foods. So let's say they may not want to have so much of sweets from a sweet shop, let's say, in the future, and maybe it will shift towards package. So that's also like a packaged move to a dessert and all. Now, all this, of course, has implication on the business, the financials, and the P&L, like you rightly pointed out, Nicolas. There could be implications on, if your products which are making better margins and they kind of their mix changes, which we are seeing live happening. There could be capacity issues, like something that's picking up. You may not necessarily have capacity for those kind of products. So I think right now the strategy is to see, of course, whatever is selling and whatever the consumer is demanding, we need to provide it to them, and we need to make it available, like what Gyanesh was also saying, because the consumers are picking. B, I think we need to watch the trends, make our scenarios, and say, if it goes this way, what should I do? Or if it goes that way, what should I do? And be ready and have the plans in place. Watch the trend for a couple of months, and then kind of start triggering, firing your bullets, whatever you think you're finally seeing. And you can't even wait too long, because these trends will change and some of them will stay. So you have to take some calls on the business, on the P&L, and then just go for it.
How many times a month do you revisit these scenarios? Once a month, a couple of times a month?
So initially, when it started, it was almost like, maybe 4 or 5 times a month. Now, 2 months have passed. We have seen what has happened. Things are getting stable. So now it's maybe twice a month.
Okay. Perfect. So maybe going to General Mills and asking question there, because they have a very diverse portfolio, I think, from bakery products to ice cream, if I'm correct, to some other products. What do you see happening there specifically? Because it's quite diverse.
Correct. So in General Mills, we have a quite diversified portfolio, as you rightly put it. So we have, on one hand, Pillsbury is our flagship brand. So we are very strong in the essential piece. So Pillsbury Atta is one part of our business. The other part is the bakeries business, where we supply cake mixes to all the bakeries across India. So the impact of both the business is quite diverse, is quite different. So bakeries has been heavily impacted. So the entire food services, so all the QSRs or quick service restaurants, cafes, everything has been under lockdown. So we are also impacted by that, because a major part of our business is supplying products to these in B2B business. And what we have seen an upside is in terms of the essential. So one of the things as a consumer behavior, which in short term definitely will stay, is reduction of out of home consumption. So we do see a reduction in out of home consumption, where consumers will prefer to stay at home, cook and consume, and because they would be worried from a hygiene and safety and standpoint. So we have seen an upside in terms of the essential or the Atta business. We have had to ramp up our supply chain capabilities as well in a very short time, because as soon as the lockdown was announced, we suddenly saw an uptick in the consumption of Atta, and hence huge spikes in demand, and we had for us to cater that with a lot of challenges as well, logistic challenges, manpower challenges being phased out of plant. So to balance everything and then to ensure that you are able to meet the consumer demand was the focus area for essential piece. I think from the B2B business, where the sales has been negatively impacted, one of our focus areas is again to ensure that we are ready for when the momentum comes back. I think we as a manufacturer within the value chain, we need to take that step to see that the momentum comes back in the value chain. So we are trying to actually educate our distributors, our bakeries, so that they are able to recover back. We are trying to see if we can sort of ease the tension in terms of the working capital which they are facing. Do they even understand the entire, say, MSME benefits, etc.? Because not everyone is.
So this is something you do as finance, to go and educate them as a team?
Yes. So one of the things as finance, what we are trying to do is we are trying to declutter the entire benefits or some of the things which, say, either a retailer or bakeries or even a distributor can actually benefit, because not everyone is on the same page in terms of understanding where, say, the lowest working capital is available and stuff like that. So that is one aspect of thing which we are trying to do, and we are trying to get back that momentum as soon as things start to ease out.
Okay, perfect. I echo you on the Atta piece. I've been making my own chapatis for the first time in my life, so I know I've been buying this. Harsh, we've not spoken yet. So more specifically to the Coca-Cola company, which is of course the marketing company, and you've been also heading the finance function for the bottling company. If we look at this scenario planning, which is one way to approach it, are there other ways you approach it to see how you can make sure that supply, demand, and cash all are aligned from a product mix perspective?
Yeah, Nico. So I think we have gone through different phases over the last 3 months. So when we started, things were very uncertain, and that's where I think we went into the scenario planning heavily to try and work out different scenarios, because in this current situation, very difficult to say where will you land. So only thing you can plan is you can work different possible scenarios and then try to allocate your resources. This is the scenario that you see you're going with. So we started with that, and as I think we have progressed, we see things changing, things are improving. So just to add to what other speakers have said, I think one of the trends we have clearly seen is at-home consumption is going up, which is very simply because people are spending more time at home, and away from home channels remain closed. So most of the away from home channels like restaurants, bars, travel channel, they remain closed. So consumption occasion are shifting to at home, and that's where you see the product shift also happening. Which do create some complexities from the supply chain perspective, because you have different packages which move in different channels, and suddenly if you have a surge in demand in one kind of package, your supply chain takes some time to gear up to that. So we have been working through some of those challenges and trying to ensure that the customers which remain open, how do we best serve them in terms of what demands are coming in. But yeah, it has been it's not been easy adjusting to all this, and what it requires you to quickly adapt to the situation, make changes in your supply planning, and keep assessing where the demand will next come from, what kind of packages, and keep adjusting that. So we keep learning as we go along. But the good news is month on month, I think things are better. So as we move from April to May, May is better than April, and June is better than May. So things seems to be on upward track.
Yeah, but slowly, I guess, not in big shocks at this point in time.
Yeah.
So you're part of a global company, and there are some countries across the globe which have approached this quite differently. Are there some learnings from there that you try to take back to India?
Yeah. So we keep assessing as to what's happening across various other countries, and different governments have taken different calls, and that has resulted in different curve for the whole COVID. I think one of the good news that we keep hearing is the countries which has gone through their worst phase. I think recovery is happening quick, and that's a good news from the category perspective, that we have always seen in 3 or 4 countries which has gone through this. As they start coming back, consumers start coming back quick, and category recovery happens. It also helps you in scenario planning, because when you look at the curves that China or South Korea or Singapore and countries like that, which were in advanced, or the countries like Italy have taken, it helps you plan your scenario better, and plan your resource allocation better, and plan your mix better. So we do keep taking those learnings. However, Nico, the fact remains that each country in its own journey. It has its own economic challenges, and hence the recovery timelines may be different. And what happened in one place can't be applied to others. So
okay.
Directly.
Perfect. So Gyanesh, just passing on the question on the scenario planning. So you're a local company, yeah. So you might have your investors that can guide you a little bit, but where do you get your information, and how do you make sure that your scenario planning is as close as possible to what the future will look like?
Yeah, so for me, just the way the other panelists have said, the ear to the ground is very important. So right now the situation is very dynamic, it is evolving. So right now, we are in a situation where supply is basically the constraint. So our entire focus is how do we streamline supplies, right from manufacturing right up to the depot operations. And honestly, it's a evolving discussion on a daily basis. So basically, right now the focus is there is a change in the product mix. So we are trying to maximize, the products which are actually demand-led right now. We are putting more resources behind that. And the idea is that when demand kind of stabilizes, then the portfolio gets sold. So right now the focus is more on going with the demand and investing behind the demand.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So maybe closing off this this topic and moving on to topic of the channel. So we spoke about product, but channels are also changing. So Sophia, if you can maybe put up the question. So what will be the preferred channel for distribution going forward? General trade, modern trade, e-commerce hyper local. Let me see. Yeah, so I think this will come to everyone, and I maybe have an open question on this. The channels definitely have changed, of course, and because of diverse reasons. What do you see the channel mix looking like going forward? You feel things will fall back to what it was before, or you really see a change happening there? And are you doing something on that? I'm just asking to Pratyush, maybe.
Yeah. So, see, Nicola, I think the channel mix is definitely going to change to some extent in the future. Having said that, I don't think any channel will lose relevance. Like, I don't think traditional trade or modern trade or any channel is going to lose any relevance. The only thing that's going to happen is your e-commerce channel, which is currently maybe small parts of many of our businesses, that is bound to grow. Hyper-local e-commerce, home deliveries, all those things are bound to grow. And not only the e-commerce channel, also the home deliveries. Let's say your kiranas or the guys who are next to your house, they'll be delivering more home, at least in the short to medium term is our sense. So that channel, it's very important for FMCG like ours to strengthen it, to build muscles there, to maybe divert some resources from advertising and promotions point of view, and really kind of have a play, and also maybe have a portfolio that kind of lands in that channel. The other channel that we see will get, of course, impacted adversely, and again it will stay in the medium to the short run, is the alternate channel, where you supply, let's say we supply chocolates to airlines and to the trains, or to PVR, for example. Of course, those businesses are almost down to zero. They will come back, but they will take a lot of time to come back, right? And the out of home consumption, and let's say in restaurants and all those things will take time to come back. Thankfully, that's not a very big part of our business. But that will definitely get impacted, and we have to find alternates to kind of substitute that with in-home consumption. So definitely the answer is yes, shifting channels, e-commerce gaining relevance, AFH will struggle. Other channels will continue to be very, very important.
So there's of course a hit on the modern trade channel, especially for supermarkets which are in malls and so on. But do you feel in the long run this will still be a channel that will be growing faster than for example in e-commerce or a general trade, or you feel it will be more towards e-commerce?
No, I think definitely e-commerce is going to grow, and it's going to grow exponentially. So e-commerce is one place where growth will come, but modern trade I think will continue to grow so long as the categories are growing, and we see that our categories are not struggling, which we think will not happen, because we are also seeing some green shoots already happening. If the categories are growing, I think modern trade will play its part in helping the companies grow and driving the categories that we're operating in.
Okay. So anyone a different thought, or for their particular company it might be very different?
So not really different, but I think there are going to be two different ways to look at it. One is what's going to happen in the immediate short term. And I agree with Pratyush that there's going to some changes which will happen in the short term, which may or may not remain relevant in the long term. For example, I very clearly see that modern organized retail in the short term, because of heightened social distancing norms, is going to have challenge. And in fact, because of this, they are also gravitating towards having an omni-channel presence. We have seen many of the offline modern trade retailers moving to online. So that is something which will be there. But structurally, clearly, there will be a shift towards modern trade and e-commerce, which will grow. So currently, FMCG contributes about 2%. 2% contribution comes from e-commerce. So I think there was anyways an acceleration which was happening on e-commerce, but this pandemic again has given reasons to this getting accelerated. So I think it's quite possible that in the next, what would have happened in the next 2 to 3 years may happen in 1 year in the e-commerce channel. Now, another interesting thing, what we have seen, and in fact, we as an organization have also done, is we have also ourselves directly reaching to consumers. So we have made a DTC site where consumers can buy products, and we will ensure supply chain to kind of deliver through third-party delivery models. Similarly, there are some innovative partnerships which also got built during this lockdown, because we linked up with some food aggregators to kind of supply when traditional supply chain was not working. Now, some of them, might continue. Some of them might not because of scale. But again, these are very, very new innovative models which has emerged. And as we all say that any adversity brings in opportunity. And I believe these are the opportunities which has come up in front of FMCG. And I believe at least some of them will definitely, be scaled up.
So Harsh, maybe because we all know the brand Coca-Cola quite well and so on. Do you see similar trend that e-commerce will become a much more bigger share of the pie than the other channels?
So definitely we're seeing that shift happening, Nico. And how much actually channels will shift will depend on really how long this whole crisis lasts here and how much habits does get permanently changed. But few things that are very clear, which we see happening is the grocery channel is growing faster, and given in the short run because that is the only channel which remains open and driven by at-home consumption. So grocery channel definitely is doing better. E-commerce is growing; it's growing exponentially. It's still a small part of the business, but growing pretty fast. The away from home channels currently are muted, mostly because of the lockdown and restrictions. And even when they open, I think they will take some time to come back. So really, it'll be about a year from now. We'll exactly know as to how the channel mix actually will look like. And it all depends on how this whole COVID situation goes. So if there is a vaccine on the horizon and things become clear, maybe the channels bounce back faster. But if you have to live with this for maybe a longer time, then we'll see some more permanent shift in the channel happening. But e-commerce for sure, and there's some new channels and omni channels emerging. So a lot of home delivery options are emerging. People like Danjo, Swiggy, Zomato, they're all getting into a larger than food delivery e-commerce option.
Yeah.
And I think that's there to stay for a longer time. So whether companies put their own sites and have a direct to home delivery, or they are partners, but direct to home is there to stay. It looks like.
Okay. So is there a play for you there, or you just gonna work with the local stores and with the Swiggies and the Zomatos, or is this something you see yourself also having an opportunity to maybe get closer to the customer, have higher margins from the hyperlocal piece?
So in fact, we already have our own e-commerce site called Coke to Home, which we have been in various cities using for last few years. We see a heightened traction there now. So we see multiple models, Nico, will be at work. Your own site and your own delivery options to your distributors or retailers, plus the delivery agents or the other players which will come in the delivery space. So way I see it emerging, it'll be a mix of multiple options that will go, all driven towards growing at-home consumption, and there'll be multiple models at which the RTM will be a route to market may be different,
Okay.
either directly or through your partners.
Okay. Maybe to Sheshadri, anything you can add from your perspective on this?
Yeah, I think what COVID has done is it has definitely added, so a lot of new consumers have actually tried e-commerce as a channel or have ordered. So it has definitely added new users to that channel. And I agree. So broadly, we also feel that, so e-commerce was easily the fastest growing channel across major FMCGs. That was true for us as well. But we see that the growth has received an impetus, and that will stay for some time because we do feel that it will grow. Modern trade, I think, temporarily it has been impacted given the social distancing concerns and it being under lockdown. But I feel that once things sort of ease out, maybe 6 months to a year, definitely modern trade would sort of come back. One of the things which we are actually seeing different is even in traditional trade, I think has had a lot of relevance in the current COVID environment because, say, as a channel, it is comparatively low contact versus, say, mall and stuff like that. So I think after e-commerce, traditional trade has found relevance. We are actually seeing even bigger packs, say a 10 kg atta pack going from say a traditional trade versus earlier those were generally it would be part of say modern a trade environment. So we are seeing that sort of shifts, but I think e-commerce is there to grow, but the rest of the things should bounce back.
Okay, thank you. So Gyanesh, maybe as last one of the panel, throw in a question. And again, looking at one end, you have of course different product categories, but one is the ready meals which are there, and I'm guessing from a product perspective, e-commerce sounds a little bit more closer as a channel for these things. Convenience is there. You're at work. Oh, what do I eat this evening? I'm just going online and getting it. Do you see that happening?
Yeah, so let me take this question in two parts. So one is I agree with Sheshadri. For me, the general trade has actually clearly shown their resilience. This particularly the last 2.5 months were very difficult for trade. And for me, one clear winner in the way they have operated in these, in these difficult times is the Kirana stores. They have ensured their supplies. There are no shortages in the supply chain. They've gone out of the way. There are stories in our system as to how we, how the retailers themselves have ensured supplies. Now, coming back to the new channels, let me call them new channels. For me, what this has led to is this has actually led to opportunities. A couple of interesting experiments that have happened. One was touched upon by Pawan also. There are a lot of companies as well as aggregators who are going directly to housing societies. So they are setting up stalls. They are servicing the customer directly. Now, what it does is it is creating new channel servicing options. Let me put it like that. The ticket sizes in these kind of opportunities is much higher compared to when you go to buy from a regular Kirana store. So the cost economics works out better. You have actually, what should I say, the opportunity for people to buy. The convenience is there, the safety is there. So people want to actually explore these opportunities. On the e-com piece, I just have one, incremental, insight. E-com has two parts to it. One is the B2B part, which is primarily Udaan. If I were to think of it in JioMart, when it came up with a similar model of B2B and B2C. So clearly, in my opinion, in the short term, B2C is definitely going to grow. The good news will be the long term. And in my opinion, channels like Udaan, when they get married with the general trade, which means they give the the option of marrying the efficiency of procurement on the side of the e-com B2B supplier, which is Udaan, and marries it with the flexibility of the Kirana store. Then it's going to be a very, very potent combination, in my opinion. And I am hoping that these are the kind of things which will come out of this crisis. There'll be new models and new innovation which will come even in channel.
So Sheshadri, you also see that for your B2B space?
We do so see some of the things, new opportunities which are actually tied up is so we ourselves. So one of the examples is Häagen-Dazs. So Häagen-Dazs, we actually go to we have tried a thing where we go to the societies and directly supply to the consumer. So that's one thing which we have tried. The other thing is we have actually tied up with even QSRs and food aggregators to supply essentials. So you would actually find a lot of say Pillsbury atta listing in say Domino's website and stuff like that. So these are all new channels which we have tried, which is sort of working. But I think overall, but it still we'll need to see as to how long term and what is the
whether it's this
it will achieve.
By the way, if you have Belgian chocolate ice cream, Häagen-Dazs, I've been looking for it. You can always deliver it at my place in Mount Mary. Okay, moving on to the next section. Thank you all for your inputs. Sophia, if you can put up the question. This question is a little bit more about the challenges people face in the current scenario. So yeah, where you are today, or what's the biggest challenge? Is it labor shortage, logistics, manufacturing scale up, or the disruption at the stockist level and the smaller companies level? Just asking the question, what would be, why we spoke already a little bit about a couple of things, but if we look at these four topics, Pratyush, what would be your biggest one?
See, Nicolas, to begin, when the crisis started, it was about distribution and it was about getting your product to the store and getting the stores to open. I think now it has moved to supply chain, to supplying the product. So by supplying the product, I mean manufacturing. So now all the focus of the organization is towards making sure that we are able to produce and keep our stocks and get the supply chain back end kind of working. And the challenges, of course, which I'm sure everybody is facing, is people in the factories, trying to get people in the factories and getting the factories to run and operate at full capacity. We haven't yet reached there, but it's improving day by day. Hopefully we'll reach there, because the demand end is picking up, and it's very clear that that trend is coming out very clearly. What we don't want now is to say, we're not able to supply to consumer demand. That's the biggest challenge at this stage. Of course, it started off by saying demand, because it almost started off with no sales in the first week. Then it gradually picked up. Now it has started stabilizing at decent levels. So it's definitely manufacturing for us at this stage.
So we spoke a lot about the demand side. So if you look at the supply side, do you see some real shifting changes happening at your end, or you think things will just go back to what it was before?
No, I think they will go back to what they were before, in the sense that our supply side, it's not that easy to change, because it's a huge capital setup that you have, and you have to make it work. It's not very easy to kind of set up new factories or change the way you kind of manufacturing in the short term. So I think it will go back. There will be, of course, I think for some time there would be some increased cost of operations because of social distancing, or the fact that you may have to do changeovers, cleanovers, etc., a little faster, and all that will happen. But those things are not showstoppers. So I think those would be the primary changes. The biggest challenge that will stay for some time is going to be manpower. Yeah. That's the challenge that we see. That's one. And second is, if God forbid wherever your manufacturing units are, if they come under containment zone, or if you find cases of the disease in your factory, then it of course again impacts the supply chain in a way. Anyway, internally we have such strict protocols within Mondelez. So forget about whatever the government is saying. If we find a case internally, we'll do so many things ourselves that our supply chain is going to get impacted. So those challenges are going to stay in the short to medium term. And they are the ones that we are most worried about at this stage.
Yeah, because they're not predictable, of course.
Beyond you.
Yeah. So anyone that sees some shift in the way in their company supply chain will change a bit?
So I think the only other, sorry.
Go ahead, Harsh.
So the only other thing which we see in the short run, I completely agree with whatever Pratyush said in terms of the challenges. So what's happening in the short run, both from the retailer perspective and from the company perspective, at least supply chain has to be simplified a bit. So which means that you may be focusing more on the core SKUs rather than all the SKUs, because managing supply chain in this complex time, you have to try and simplify end-to-end, both for yourself and retailer. So in the short term, what I see is simplification will mean that you will focus more on the core SKUs rather than all the SKUs, and which will take some time for the entire portfolio to come back.
Yeah. So this was actually one of my next questions. But Gyanesh, you have something to add to what Harsh said?
Yeah, just one global point. If you see the FMCG industry, it's very typical in the sense that, if you see where the demand is, where are the demand centers, where is high disposable income, where is the manufacturing, and where is the let me say, the manpower pool. So typically the demand comes from the west and north, which is primarily for most of the FMCG companies. They are the big markets. Most of the manufacturing is actually happening in Uttarakhand and in Himachal, which is, because of historical reasons. And if you see where the manpower is actually in UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh. So it's a very typical scenario that, what is going to happen in our opinion is that over the long term, and obviously I agree with what Pratyush is saying, there's too much capital which is invested behind, the manufacturing setup and supply chain setup. But gradually what's going to happen is this is going to become a little more homogeneous, because the reasons for which all the capex was put up, those reasons are now gone because of GST. So there should be some kind of realignment where demand and human resources will kind of, marry. and then demand will actually have supply also coming into the similar centers, let us put it like that. So that's something we would see probably in the medium term, I would say.
Okay. Okay. Anyone had something to add to this? Was an interesting thought.
So the only other point, Gyanesh, is I think that's different. What I see for ourselves is that our supply chain is pretty homogenized, spread across the each state. So we don't see that challenge. But that challenge can again be in the raw material, packing material space. Yeah. So where you have few supply points, and I think one has to go and map the entire supply point again to see whether it's completely de-risk or may do something from that perspective. So I see it more relevant in, let's say in our case, on the supply points, which is the RMPM supplies rather than the finished goods.
So coming back to the SKU piece, which Harsh was talking about. So, and I've seen in my company as well, one of the things when you're a little bit under pressure, you go back to basics. And, you know, in the last couple of years, you've been experimenting new product lines, new brands maybe, and so on. Is this a trend that you see continuing for a longer period of time in your company, for example, Pawan, because you guys have a quite extensive product portfolio?
So I think things have been improving. So what we were experiencing in the month of April and now what we're experiencing is very, very different. So initially what we had done was we prioritized those high velocity SKUs or where we saw that, you know, consumption would be on the higher side. But as things are progressing, we are getting manpower, but we don't know as to how things will pan out post this, you know, entire migration which is happening. So there will be a challenge. So I believe, yes, manpower is the biggest challenge, be it manpower on the, you know, shop floor or feet on the street. But again, over here, as far as supply chain is concerned, you know, we have to come up with innovative solutions. Again, over here, while we talked about as to how innovatively companies are trying to reach to consumers, again, there has been a lag in terms of how innovatively you are trying to reach to the retailers, because to the general trade, for example, you know, companies are setting up telecalling facilities. When your salesman is not able to visit the stores, can those orders be taken over call, and then again you get it delivered through you know, rather than your manpower going himself. Similarly, we've also been experimenting with retailer app. So you know, they can place their order like a consumer does. A retailer can place an order over the retailer app. So again, these things are being innovatively being tested at this point in time. Again, as I said in the previous conversation, that some of them might be scaled up. Some of them, because of scale, may not be able to you know, go on a higher scale. But these are things which you know, companies are trying to grapple with, so that, you know, the supply to the retailers, to the consumers continue.
Okay, perfect. Let me move on because we were also a bit constrained in time. Huh? Sophia, can you put up the next question?
A second. Here you go.
Yeah, so this is towards go-to-market strategy, and what percentage of the product portfolio will be impacted by that. So a little bit looking at the different approaches, Gyanesh, I may be asking a question to you, and what are the go-to-market strategies that keep on changing? Is there something you're doing at Capital Foods in that respect?
So for us, like I said in the previous question also, for us, we clearly see the saliency of general trade is going to be there. Yes, there is going to be incremental, say gains that will come in e-com space for sure, both both in terms of B2B as well as B2C. But I think the big play is going to be there in general trade only. So for us, the idea is going to be how to improve execution, how to improve product availability, how to ensure that we are the best best in store, best looking in store. So we'll stick to our fundamentals, and I don't think this is going to have a long-term impact in the way we work the market.
Yeah, we actually covered this already a little bit. Let me maybe move on to the next piece. So this is about digitization of the processes, which I think is an important aspect in a lot of aspects, and finance is of course one of the I would say the areas where everything comes at the end of the road. Finance is connected with each part of the organization, and the more digitized, the more your jobs should be easier, and the better information you have to make the right decisions and inform the management. Do you see during this period in some particular spaces where in your company there have been some changes? And I'm asking Sheshadri on the digitization piece.
Yes, yeah, I think one thing which we have seen is what COVID has done is it has actually given impetus in digitizing the entire value chain. So, like a case in point, so we have been trying to do that, like even as simple as operational as a claim management system. So we have been trying to digitize that. We have been trying to do away with say hard copies and stuff like that. So we have been trying to do that, and then it has taken its own time to bring all the distributors on board and stuff like that. But with the COVID scenario, what has happened is it's just fastened or accelerated the entire process because the distributors, because with the restrictions coming in, we need to simplify and digitize it, as otherwise that it becomes a bottleneck and the service levels, etc., everything gets impacted. So we have been able to sort of do such digitization process. So for general biz, even actually we have a big GBS based out of India as well, so which caters to the entire globe. So with work from home, we have been able to manage it, digitize it, and find a way to work around. And we have been able to maintain the service levels without any big issues. So I think digitization will definitely has received an impetus in the current scenario.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I know from Marico specifically, especially on the talent acquisition front, you are a company which is quite innovative and using the local technology available in finding solutions. So I'm sure, Pawan, you are doing some stuff at this point in time, which might be a little bit innovative. Is that correct to say?
No, you're right. And I think this is a irreversible trend. And sooner the companies realize this and companies join this wave, quicker they'll be able to adapt and win. And in my mind, this digital transformation is manifesting itself in multiple ways in every aspect of business. So let's say right from starting the way we engage with the consumers, the consumer engagement programs have undergone a significant change. The way we used to engage with consumers earlier and now is very different. The channel with which we engage with the consumer in terms of the way we sell, and we have spoken a lot about it in terms of e-commerce, modern trade, etc. So e-commerce is again nothing but a digitization of the way you interact with the consumers, the way you record your transactions, the way you review a business performance. Everything is getting digitized. So in Marico, typically what we do is, for any finance processes, the very first question we ask ourselves is, can this be automated? Can we deploy RPA? So thereby, how far you can be completely, independent of individuals taking decisions or recording transactions. So that is something which we keep doing, and therefore we have made a lot of strides in this particular space. And for example, if it is performance review, so now performance review actually happens on dashboards, and these dashboards are like exception dashboards, and we don't review full-fledged financials. So while there could be some, similarly, for example, in commercial control area, again, these are areas where we do review basis exceptions. There could be some false negatives, but still the kind of efficiency which we can drive through review through exception dashboards is phenomenal. Take up the entire space of internal audit. Now, earlier the internal audit used to happen, people used to go to the location, do a full-fledged, 15 days audit. Now, all of the entire audit can happen actually sitting in the head office. And again, through exception-based analytics dashboards, etc. And also, again, this pandemic in my mind has opened, again, opportunities. For example, this entire statutory audit and doing board meeting, etc., all through digital mode itself is an example. I would have never thought in my life that, I would be able to complete annual audit and do a virtual stock take. So my auditor is taking the stock over Zoom. So that is practically unimaginable. So I think, again, this has been a trend, but again, this pandemic has kind of given reasons for us to step up our journey in this. And I believe this will continue.
Okay. Harsh, anything from Coca-Cola company perspective?
So completely in line with whatever has been said. And what we realized is that investments that we made into technology over the last few years as well as in terms of setting up the shared services and GBS, actually has come in very handy, in this pandemic. And it only, I think this will only accelerate the journey. So there are a lot of processes where one debated whether they could happen offline or they need to necessarily happen online. We have all seen over the last few months that a lot more can happen online than we imagined earlier. So I think this will only accelerate the journey in terms of digitization. And somewhere uh, the the steps taken in terms of, let's say, setting up the Telcel center or setting up the apps to take the order from the retailers, uh, setting up the automated supply planning platforms, which requires minimal manual interventions and production schedulings and so on and so forth. You realize they come in very handy in these times where a lot of work can happen remotely than somebody needing to intervene. So our global closing, for example, happened virtually out of the GBS center. And if you ask me 6 months back, one would have only 20% confidence that everybody can sit at home and the company of size of Coca can do a virtual closing and the reporting. But that has happened, and that gives a lot of confidence that more such process can move. So yeah, I think this is a big push again. A next wave of digitization will happen for sure.
Okay, so I'm hearing you're very happy with that, and you don't see yourself going back to the old way of working.
In fact, when we were discussing after the first quarterly close, and when we were taking a stock take of how it happened, we got reviews and that said that possibly that this is a more productive way of doing the book close than what happened earlier.
Yeah.
And you're right. Some of the processes may continue to remain like this forever and may not go back to the original shape.
Okay, perfect. Anything to add, Pratyush or Gyanesh? Because I think the topics are in every company a bit similar, but maybe there's something else you can add on this.
No, I think it's pretty similar to whatever everyone has said. That's what's happening in Mondelez also. And I think for me, just one point to add is that at the consumer end, I think digitization, consumer and customer end, I think that's where digitization will really get accelerated. And all the organizations are putting a lot of resources behind that front, in terms of how do you take orders and how your customers interact and place orders for your products.
I think we had a question on this, Sophia, or not? Or we didn't? No, we didn't, I think. No, we didn't have a question. Okay, perfect. Maybe moving on to the panel, the questions we're getting, the Q&A. We still have around 15 minutes left to go through a couple of questions. And I have a question here and I'll open it to everyone. If you don't answer, I'll pick someone, don't worry. So there's Vinay Shajdev. He mentioned, or he asked, all the panelists mentioned the importance of availability of product and supply chain partners is extremely important and to be successful. So how are you helping your suppliers from a financial perspective, given the issues that all of them would have from a working capital cash position perspective? Is any one of you doing something to support them in the channel?
I think, Nicolas, I can just, what we are trying to do, of course, we are trying to not give any advances or anything like that. But if our suppliers, some of them need some support in terms of early payment releases and all, we're supporting them to that extent. And maybe, releasing some payments faster so that the working capital at their end is managed in a slightly better way.
So Nicolas,
thankfully,
sorry.
Thankfully, we are in a sector which are not really. Sorry, Harsh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Sorry, Pawan, after you.
Sure. Thanks. I was just saying, thankfully, we're in a sector which are which is not cash strapped. So thankfully, cash flow is not an issue into the sector where we operate, and therefore, we as an organization also thought that let us support to us, whether it's a channel partners or vendors to the extent possible. So in fact, we've been giving selective credit to our distributors. Supporting them in their working capital, even on vendors, we've wanted, because it's also important for us that the entire ecosystem survives. Because, for example, if your vendors of critical raw material or critical packing material, some unique pieces are not there, and it will go to impact your business also. So therefore, we have been very pragmatic out here and not really thinking that you have to go frugal everywhere. So wherever it is possible to support our own vendors or channel partners, we've been very proactive in that.
Okay. Any other means than financially that you're supporting them?
Yes, apart from that, we've also kind of, for our distributors, salesmen, for our logistic partners, workers, etc., we've also supported them with respect to COVID insurance so that they also feel part of the larger group. So we have not left them to the mercy of their own real employees, but actually we have given COVID insurance, some sort of allowance, etc., because that was needed. And as a responsible corporate, we thought it's our responsibility to support our extended teams.
Okay. Harsh, you wanted to say something, or Gyanesh? Harsh, maybe?
Yeah. So again, I think since our channel partners and suppliers are a critical part of ecosystem, so it's always important that you assess where they are and what they need. Also, what happens is fortunately, we have had some structured programs on supplier financing and customer financing, like channel financing, which comes very handy in these times when they need some extra funds. Some of the structured programs also help in ensuring that they have the liquidity to go through this crisis. So that's the other thing that is helping.
Okay. That's it. Gyanesh, anything to add? Or that was it? Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah.
So I have a question from someone at michaelpage. He's heading the consumer practice with us. So I'm doing him a favor to read out his question, but I think it's an interesting question. His name is Agrawal. So he says a lot of companies are focusing on the rural market as the consumption has picked up there because of the migrant population returning. How do you see the investment going in this channel as the last mile is tougher to get? So I think Coca-Cola is very good at that in terms of distribution, Harsh, and maybe the other ones can add on to that.
Yeah. The increasing distribution has always remained one of the biggest opportunity for the FMCG. So, and every year your endeavor is to how do you go and increase your distribution further to where you are. As we speak, I think we have a fairly vast network of distributor wholesalers, which reaches across, including rural part of India. So we're in a position to cater to any demand changes that may happen in the short run. In the long run, I think demand will rebalance itself as the industrial activity picks up and as the reverse migration which is happening. I'm sure part of the reverse migration will again get reversed. So over the next 6 to 9 months, as the industrial activity picks up, the population will rebalance and demand will rebalance. However, from the distribution perspective, I think there's an opportunity of every company wherever the demand picks up. We have to remain relevant and ensure that our distribution strength is picking up accordingly.
Okay. Anyone who has a different approach or has different discussions internally on this?
I think, Nicolas, pretty similar to what Harsh said. I think definitely short term, there would be a bit of shift because obviously the population has moved to the rural areas. The setups are all there. We are all, already supplying to rural. It can be I think the opportunity that I see is currently rural maybe for some companies a 2 or 3 step process. You may have a distributor, then a sub distributor, then the retailer. There may be an opportunity to consolidate that a bit and go direct as an organization as the size grows. Now again, a trend that needs to be watched and you need to do some scenarios, but I think there could be a possibility of consolidation of how we supply to the rural area so that the cost of servicing for the organizations are kind of brought down because it's an expensive channel to service.
Okay. Anyone else? No? Perfect. I have another question from, if I pronounce this correctly, Kshitij Saraogi. So he's asking, and this is an interesting question because he asked a little bit the comparison with demonetization. It was also a disruption, of course, a slightly different one, maybe a little bit more pointed in one direction. But what do you feel the comparison with demonetization as a being in the consumer industry? One, and secondly, how long do you think that for going back to normal, yeah, just what we were having before the crisis, how long that would take in terms of months? Anyone some thoughts? Anyone some views on that? Pawan?
So I think it's different from what we experienced during Demon. Demon was more of a liquidity issue in my mind, but here here a large set of people will be grappling with income issues. So while there was a liquidity issue for a period of 2 to 3 months till the time system came back, but over here, there is a fear in terms of significant amount of job losses, which will lead to a disposable income going down, and therefore its impact on some categories. So it's very, very different in my mind, and therefore, how much of time will it take to revive is jury still out in my mind, because we ourselves don't know at this point in time how the COVID itself will play out in the times to come. Because whether we have peaked out, whether we have not peaked out, there's enough debate which can happen out there. So therefore, it's very difficult to suggest as to when the revival can happen. But yes, we'll have to continuously keep working on the opportunities which are there, and we'll have to all experience together. So in my mind, it is very difficult to compare with Demon.
Okay. Anyone else, or move on to the next?
I sort of tend to agree. I think COVID is very sort of broad-based, which actually, frankly, it's impacted everyone in the society as well. So even say students or colleges being shut down. So it's much more broad-based, where even economic activity, like just for the fact that schools and colleges have shut down, has an impact on the economy. Whereas I think demonetization was more towards, one, it didn't impact the entire sort of players of economy, and also it was more towards liquidity, and hence I think the recovery was much faster versus now, which I foresee will take some more time versus that.
Okay. Moving on to the next question. This is a little bit more forward-looking and building on the news from the last couple of weeks. And probably there will be differing doors, though, so maybe asking to everyone again, what is the impact of Jio-Facebook deal in the Kirana segment? Is this positive, you think? And how would it pan out for the consumer companies in that respect? Anyone some views on that?
Yeah, so I'll take that one, Nico. So for me, what is very interesting is the timing of the deal. So if you see, it has come right in the middle of the crisis. So for me, what it shows is the confidence of the fundamentals of the India growth story are very there. And, the big investments, they are not worried about the 3 to 6 month play that is going to happen because of this particular crisis. So one, for me, the timing is very important. It is very reassuring, if you were to ask me. The other is, if you were to actually see how this is playing out, it is also that, the combination of, the two big, giants with the strength of WhatsApp, what Jio can actually do is much more broad-based, because today WhatsApp has become just another way of actually communicating, which is very, very popular. So today, WhatsApp can actually do money transfer, it can do order transfer. So it has a tremendous capability of a very big disruption. So in my opinion, it's very, very, exciting, and probably to throw up a lot of new opportunities in a lot of areas, in terms of money transfer, go to market, in terms of your customer ordering and being service. So it's got a huge opportunity, in my opinion.
Okay, so and where will the impact be in the channel? Who will be probably getting most impacted negatively?
So to my mind, it is actually going to be complementary. See, if you see the model is actually, JioMart started off with a B2B model. Now they have switched on into the B2C model. So currently they are actually having a kind of a B2C play, which is very similar to a Big Basket and a Grofers. But their core model is actually a B2B supplier, which is very similar to Udaan, which is basically they're trying to service a Kirana store. So in my opinion, they're actually going to supplement and make the supply chain much stronger and service the retailer, who in turn will service the consumer. To my mind, it is more symbiotic and not so much a disruption.
Okay. Anyone some views on this?
Yeah, so I think the good part about this whole model which is emerging is that Kirana stays at the center of the whole activity. Yeah, so Kiranas are not going anywhere. In fact, they will get modernized. They will have better access to the products and supplies, and they will get digitized. So digitization will get a big boost with this whole activity. Uh, Possibly, I think if you have to ask who will get impacted. Uh, Currently, these kiranas are getting supplied through a series of wholesalers. Yeah, and there's a layer of wholesalers which are involved in terms of getting the products supplied to a lot of kiranas. Somewhere company reach direct, but a lot of places it's a wholesaler. So I think we have to. It'll be interesting to watch as this model emerges as to what will happen to those intermediaries and how those intermediaries will find relevance in this new world. So it's an interesting model emerging.
Okay. So that was my last question. Everyone wants to add something to it before I close out? No? Okay. So before I close out, we have a last question. It's about recruitment, of course. We always we need to bring our own angle a little bit in it as well. So it's about which of the following best describes your intentions towards hiring staff. Currently hiring, don't know till COVID-19 passes, expect to hire in the next 3 months, no plans to hire in the next 3 months. It's a quite predictive indicator on how the industry is doing. So if I need to make a guess, I would say expect to hire in the next 3 months. Who agrees with me? No one. That's very bad for my business.
No, I think Nicolas, fingers crossed. Hopefully, yes, is what we can say.
Okay, I'll give you a call after this.
Okay. Actually, Nicolas, we've been hiring actually. So in the last 3 months or 2.5 months, there would have been multiple joinings in our organization. We've honored all our commitments which we had made to the potential hires before the pandemic.
Great.
And we stand by that. And also, I believe for replacement positions, there is no reason for companies like us who are not really facing the heat as much as many other sectors are facing, that there shouldn't be any sort of freeze on the hiring. Yes, new positions can really wait. Some of the things can wait, but at least the replacement positions, there's no reason for us to really stop that.
But the news
I
is
think
not...
just to add to that, Nicolas, I think that's where FMCG truly comes in. It's such a stable sector. Possibly in this sector, you'll not find people. Layoffs would be, I think, a little rare even in this scenario. And B, I think my personal view is everybody will come to hiring pretty soon because hopefully the big businesses, like the Cokes and the Maricos and all those of the world will bounce back hopefully faster and maybe stronger after this ends.
Yeah.
And companies will come back to growth sooner or later. So I think structurally it's not going to damage the demand or the consumption scenario for many companies in FMCG sector.
Arch, you want to say something?
Yeah. So I think what our experience has been, Nico, and Coke has been a company which is there for the last 170 years. And after each pandemic or each crisis, I think companies emerge stronger. And so the strength of this sector and the strength of the category is pretty good. And I'm pretty confident that we'll emerge stronger out of this whole thing. So it's a phase. And as you start emerging, I'm sure the hiring starts. It's not that hiring has stopped. We have been honoring all the commitments and all the hirings that have happened. We are open to any replacement positions which comes up for hiring. So this, so to say, not a so-called freeze on hiring, but I'm sure that the industry will emerge stronger from this pandemic and will grow faster.
Okay. Anyone, anything to add, or can I close down from here? No? Okay, perfect. Thank you all, gentlemen, for being on this call. And I think we got some great insights. Sad story was that most people said there's no hiring happening for the next 3 months. So that's my sad story. It's good to hear from you, from the bigger companies, that there's quite some confidence in the way forward. And that from what I can understand from all of you, you're quite positive in how this will develop over the midterm, long term. Thank you again for your time, and thank you all for checking in with us. We have a next session in our CFO series on Friday, where we specifically looking at the engineering industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Nico.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.